Well, that's not correct. Okay, the upcoming assignments have something over there that's not right. You guys already took your 3-3-3-4 quiz. I just forgot to take that off. But on Thursday, we will have our 3-3-3-4 test, and we'll finally finish up with logarithms and be able to move on to some other algebra stuff. After this unit, we've got 2 more big units and a handful of smaller things, and then the year is basically going to be over at that point. So we've got 4 things we need to accomplish today. I need to give you a chance to ask questions from number 99, which was the 3-1 through 3-4 test review that you got about a month ago, and I asked you to go back and finish last week. First time you saw that, you didn't know how to do all of it, so that's why there was the delay. But I will be asking for that assignment. In fact, That's already in Google Classroom if you want to go ahead and turn it in. Then I will take questions from your 3-3, 3-4 quiz, which were passed back on your desk for you this morning. So as people are asking questions from the test review that you don't need help with, please take a few moments to look at your mistakes that you may have on there and see if there are things you need to ask about. As always, I think the best resource for preparing for the test would be the quiz. The second best resource would be the test. So test will be most like the quiz, but also things on the test review would also be fair game. Of course, there's a lot of overlap there. Third thing we need to do is take the quick true-false quiz, and I'll remind you and give you just a couple minutes to, I don't know, it's not something that you can really study for, but I'll remind you what the questions will look like and give you a moment or two to make sure you don't have questions there. And then finally, the fourth thing will be you should have a chunk of class time where you can study for your test on Thursday. Now, this is a B week, so I will also see you guys on Friday, but Friday we'll be moving on to the next topic. So, from your test review, finishing that up, now, just to be clear here, some questions on your test review are not going to be on Thursday's test. Like question 1 on the test review, that's about exponential functions. We did that in section 3.1. This 50-point test will be over 3.3 and 3.4. So there are certain things on the test review, of course, you don't need to worry about. But even questions like 11 and 12, even though I think I asked you to do those a month ago, those are still just asking you to evaluate logarithms, so that stuff kind of carries over and that would still be fair game. So what questions can I help with on the test review? Yeah, Julian?
Can you do number 15 about stating a domain?
I will. This is not one you need to worry about for the test though, but it should only take just a second. It wants to know the domain of this. And so I would say the key to this question is knowing what a logarithmic graph looks like. So whether it's log base 2, log base 3, or in this case log base e, all logarithmic graphs basically look like that. So his domain would be 0 to infinity. But then if you shift the graph left 2, it's going to shift the domain left 2 also. But again, that's not really from 3.3 or 3.4, and it's not something that carried over into those sections, so you don't need to worry about studying that. Now, if you end up having to take the final exam, then I guess you would need to review that at some point. Okay, all of the parts of number 14 would be good. Solving the equations. Okay, Julia, go ahead. 14D. Probably the hardest part of this one is just starting it off fairly sound. You certainly don't need logarithms for the first 2 or 3 steps here, but I would suggest multiplying both sides by this denominator, because multiplying something and dividing something, those would cancel out. Then you could either distribute your 2 or just divide both sides by 2, whichever you prefer. And you could undo a +3 with a -3. Now, I will say stuff like this, even though no one really worries about this, my 8A classes, I've seen them 4 times already since spring break, and so they've already taken this test. And I think you guys would be surprised the number of times like someone might write this as a 7, just like really careless arithmetic mistakes. So the test is pretty short, so when I say you've got time to check your work, consider doing that. Make sure that you're not adding 3 when you should be subtracting 3. Okay, and then finally, so I multiplied both of these so I didn't have fractions. You could either distribute the 2 or divide both sides by 2 so you didn't have parentheses, undo plus with the minus, and then this step is optional, but just switching these two I think helps you guys see that this is exponential form, and most, not all, but most of our questions have you switching from logarithmic form to exponential form or exponential form to logarithmic form. So to make this logarithmic form, stick a log out front, and then these two have to switch locations. And then I guess you could do this. I guess you could also call this natural log. But also, what's the natural log of 1? And negative 0 is 0. I think y'all had one like that on your quiz as well. So if you left it something like this, I didn't count it wrong because mathematically it's equivalent, but the log of 1, no matter the base, natural log is always going to be 0. E to the 0 gives you 1. So, okay, anything more specific about that one? Okay, what else? Number 8 you do not need to worry about now. Okay, if y'all have more of those questions, there will be time at the end of class, but it seems like you're low on those. So, next up would be questions from your 3-3-3-4 quiz, which overall I was very happy with, and the test is the same type of stuff. Not exactly the same question types. Again, things from the test review are also fair game. But your quiz had some change of base, some expanding and condensing, and 6 different equations to solve. And your test is pretty much the same thing, which is why I was kind of hoping that we would have just reviewed and test after spring break instead of reviewed, quiz, review, test. But I guess it gives y'all more opportunities to have a really good test score. So, as always on the quizzes, I will need you to tell me which form you have because we did use multiple forms. So let me know when you find something. Sure. And form L. Now, if you have one of the other forms, your question's not going to be exactly the same, but it is the same type of question. So you might still be able to get what you need. Now, without giving anything away here, I would be very surprised if your test did not have one that started off this way, because really the first thing you should do in this question is condense. Condensing logarithms is sometimes nice to simplify some stuff like we did in questions 2 through 6 on here, but honestly the real reason we learn to condense is because it helps us solve more complicated equations. So there's only 2 ways to condense. Adding condenses to multiplication, subtraction condenses to division. So the first thing makes the numerator, the second thing makes the denominator. And then it's a little bit harder to see what to do here. However, it's this thing that I said that comes up in almost every question. I think, actually on this quiz, I think you could have done all 6 of these this way at some point. This is logarithmic form. It's pretty complicated looking, but it is logarithmic form. So to make it be exponential form, this has to go away, and these two have to switch places. And I don't remember specifically with y'all's class, but in general, I have 4 pre-cal classes this year. It was kind of surprising how many people condensed it correctly, switched the forms correctly, and then had trouble finishing the question. You really should feel like it's much easier now because logarithms are all done. 3 squared is 9. You could multiply both sides by x, so that you don't have a fraction anymore. You can take away an x from both sides, and you can undo times with divide. Should be way more comfortable and familiar with the second half of the question, but of course everyone's different, so. That'll be a hard one. Okay, did you get what you needed from that? Okay. What about the other forms? Is anybody want to see number 10 from either of the other forms we used? It's a similar steps, but okay. Then same thing. There will be some time for you guys to study in class here. So if there is something else from your quizzes that you figure out that you want to ask, then of course that will be fine. So next up will be our true-false quiz. So here were the few examples I gave to you guys last time, just as an idea of what to expect. So 1 was condensing correctly, 3 was change of base, number 2 looks kind of like some properties you did but not done correctly, number 4 kind of looks like condensing, but condensing doesn't work that way. You can only condense subtraction or addition. You can't condense division or multiplication. So I will give you just a couple minutes and then we will do that true-false quiz. Again, at this point, there's not really anything that you can study, but I guess if something jumps out at you that you want to ask, you're welcome to. Okay, anything jumping out at y'all? Okay, you don't need to put your phones up in the front of the room or anything, but go ahead and clear your desk off. No calculator. Make sure your phone's at least put up where you won't accidentally grab it. So there are 17 questions. But I'm only counting them half a point each, so that only makes an 8.5 grade in grade book. And you got a 50-50 shot on guessing anyway. And I go one step further, and I will tell you for all of our forms here, you should have 7 true answers and 10 false answers. Now, you're welcome to not answer that way if you don't want to, but in the end, there's supposed to be 7 true and 10 false. So hopefully that helps you narrow down if you think a couple are trickier. And if you can put those in the basket when you finish, and then I'll remind you what you need to do for the rest of class and before class on Thursday. Once those are in.
just want to start over. Thank you.
That's the last of the true-false quizzes. So I will be passing those back to you today because the whole purpose of these was to help you see that if you had oversimplified some of the properties or something, give you a chance to get that straightened out before you might try to use them incorrectly on the test. And then the last thing for class today is, unless you are ready to take the test now, if you know that you need to do some studying, you might as well do that while you're in class. That way, if you find something you need help with, you still have a chance to ask. You guys have just over 40 minutes, so that should go pretty far into your studying. But again, I'd always consider the 3-3, 3-4 quiz to be the best resource to study. Now keep in mind, even if you did great on that and you got a bunch of those questions right or all of those questions right, you know, that was last Thursday that you guys did that. So it's still in your interest to review it at the very least, even if you feel like you've got it all down. And finish up your test review. Make sure that you've reviewed that as well. The 2 assignments I will ask for on Thursday before we start the test will be number 99, which is the review, and number 97, which was the second practice quiz that we did last Tuesday. Both of those are opened up in Google Classroom already, so you are certainly encouraged to go ahead and just turn them in. Also though, if you have any late work or incomplete work, Thursday morning before the test will be your last chance to turn that stuff in. So you can turn those into Google Classroom also, or you can turn in the hard copies. Once we start the test, there'll be no more late work from this unit. So, any questions about any of that before I turn this stuff off?